I don't know. I might think about putting some investment into a higher grade Velcro or something because like the stuff that I bought is turning out to not be a as permanent of a fixture for the puzzles, the wall puzzles as I was.
Is it some kind of Velcro? Is that what's holding it in place right now?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was Velcro. It was
Just
I'm
glue
not.
them.
Oh,
Glue them
God.
to the wall.
You have never
Just-
you have no intention of moving, right? Just glue them to the wall.
Build the puzzles with glue on the wall.
Yeah.
Don't make mistakes.
Sort of like cement. Like make a frame in advance to stabilize it, and then just as soon as you get a piece, just super glue it. That's effectively the jigsaw puzzle version of Craggle.
That is confidence in your puzzle building right there.
It's also
want-
confidence that you're always going to want that puzzle on your wall.
Yeah, so pick a good one. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bright Guy and His Super Friends. I'm your host, Brian Lebick. Joining me for this episode is someone who I wouldn't be surprised if his next Halloween costume is Ralph Boner, Josh Zorch.
I mean, it would only make sense. Like, I gotta kind of continue the evolution, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. You did do the Quicksilver thing.
Yeah.
And next, you already heard him, but I think he's someone who I'd have to say is probably the most likely to make a boner joke, Mike Bradley.
I mean, it's just cliche if I do it.
I didn't know if you had one on tap. If you were going to be that
I mean,
quick.
whether I do or not, like, it's just, I avoid being cliche in every way I possibly can. So I don't want to make this any harder on you than I have to.
Oh, there it is. So with this, we are back. We promised we would be for the conclusion of WandaVision. We'll be talking about the final 2 episodes, probably the series as a whole. So before we get into it, and it's just easier to throw out the spoiler warning now, so we're not getting caught in anything later. So if you're not caught up with the entire series from here on out, we will be discussing anything that has happened in this show. So again, if you haven't finished, pause us now. Come back to us after you've finished. This will be your final warning for spoilers, because we're just itching to get into this one now. So, final warning. Spoilers to follow.
Wee-oo, spoiler! Wee-oo, spoiler! Something like that.
Okay, so we are free to be talking whatever the hell we want to for this show. We've covered the first, 7 episodes? So we have 8 and 9 left.
Yep.
But since this is over, and, we can sort of backtrack if we want to, but I'm sort of just kind of want to start with you guys, and basically just like, Are you satisfied with the end of the series? Because I know we spitballed a lot of theories, we spitballed speculation. I'm just kind of curious, since we now know what I think most of what we talked about was basically complete bullshit. Did that take away from your enjoyment of the show at all, or are you good with the way everything played out?
I mean, personally, I'm not going to look at a show with expectations of them meeting what my theory was or my theory being correct or anything like that, and then have that affect my enjoyment of it. We were way the fuck off base on just about all of our guesses, theories, everything. Like, I had a couple things wrote down, like, things that we got right was, like, Ralph did matter. Like, Ralph wasn't, we talked about it, like, throughout both episodes, like, Ralph's gonna be somebody.
Right.
We just didn't realize how insignificant it was going to be in the end, who Ralph was. And I mean, I don't have any problems with how they wrap things up. I have questions, of course, abound. But in terms of how they did it, I enjoyed the ending of it. Again, you guys know me as an avid X-Men fan, and seeing the Scarlet Witch come to fruition, become the Scarlet Witch.
In a mostly
yeah,
comic
that was
accurate
amazing.
costume, like, it's great.
Yes, and having it be like, having it not look as dumb as it would if it was not the way they did it.
Yeah.
Right.
They managed to get the comic book look without it being, the comic book look of her just wearing a weird thing on her head.
Right.
Which made no sense and still makes no sense when you look at the art. But it makes me excited to see maybe they'll actually take that shot with Wolverine and put him in the blue and yellow, I don't know. We'll see. Fox didn't have the balls to do that, so maybe Marvel will.
Really, at this point, if we don't get an X-Men team in full fucking costumes, like comic accurate costumes, I'm going to be thoroughly disappointed. If anybody's going to do it, I think Marvel's got to do it.
We need the blue team and the gold team.
I'll call that a significant percentage, like however you want to work out the accounting, of a significant percentage of that $70 billion they spent to buy Fox Studios wasted.
Like Fox teased it at the end of one of their movies. They had them all in the danger room in comic accurate costumes, and they said, next movie, fuck you. Nope, we're going back to this just unitard looking thing. Nope.
Well, and which one was it? The end of... Was it The Wolverine at the end? Or...
Oh, yeah, the deleted scene that they cut.
Yeah, where you got to see the costume, but it wasn't on Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't in costume, but you got to see it in, like, a little display, and it was like, oh, they're going to do it next time, and then they didn't.
Yeah.
But here we get to see the Scarlet Witch for real, to kind of, because I could go down that rabbit hole forever, but we get to see the Scarlet Witch for real here. We get to see a bit of an explanation about her powers, and where things might go with those in the future. The post-credit scene there kind of hints at things, but we don't really know what, and, I honestly, like, guessing, fuck, who knows?
Yeah.
Like, I could guess a million things, and I'm just like, it's not gonna...
I mean, that's par for the course for what we've been doing so far for WandaVision, so...
Yeah, I threw a bunch of shit at the wall in two of our shows here, and none of them actually stuck, so...
Yeah. Josh, what's your takeaway from the finale? How do you feel?
I immediately realized that really what I'm going to have to do is in a couple of weeks, I'm just going to have to binge this over maybe like 2 days. Take out the, 8 minutes of credits and the weeks in between. Again, but we're back to... I think because we've been presented this kind of material from these creators for so long in just a cinematic sense. We're generally at a movie theater. It's a 2 to 2.5 hour clip. It's just a different way to digest this. And as we talked about in the last 2 review episodes about this, but this specific material from these specific creators as well. And so we have to adjust our expectations and our approach to it, because while in between films we can do the same speculation and guesses and talk about where we think the story is going to go and what a character might do, but it's not going to be the same thing as watching a show for 8 weeks and finding all those little pieces, and then only to find out, as Mike said, that 98% of everything that we thought mattered or was an inside reference just turns out to be nothing.
I mean, we were 100% certain at one point that the multiverse had been exposed here by Quicksilver's appearance.
Oh, yeah.
We were convinced there was no other way to it. There was no other explanation.
The whole Evan Peters thing is a whole separate thing I want to get on, but let's try to focus on this.
The director did a very lengthy interview on another podcast recently, and he specifically mentioned, like, it was after the last episode aired, and so he even addressed the idea that, look, I didn't mean for everybody to think that I was talking about the Fantastic Four when I just write, when the writing team wrote the line, hey, I have an engineering friend I can call on.
Right.
That's just dialogue.
Yeah.
And we're guilty of it too. We just wanted everything to be something. Whereas everything is just storytelling. It's all part of it, but not everything has to be nods and allusions and foreshadowing and significant.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of spin off to that and sort of get into how I think too. And it's what you said, I think, with the difference between this is the first Marvel TV show. It's something we've got over 8 weeks spaced in between. The difference with the movies is it's a 2.5 hour thing where you're in the theater and then you have to wait 6 months or whatever for the next one, or in sometimes, a couple years for the sequel to that thing. So some of these things that they start name dropping or teasing in the course of that 2 hours are answered and wrapped up over the course of 2 hours. So during the course of your movie watching experience, you're spitballing all this stuff. They name drop an engineer, you're going Reed Richards. And then by the end of the movie, you know if you are right or wrong. There's no weeks in between to really let it simmer and come up with all these harebrained theories, because the movie should basically answer most of that stuff over the course of 2 hours. Because this is broken up and you get weeks in between, like you said, we get to just spitball and the mind goes wild as to what could be happening and where this is going to go. So my takeaway from this series is I loved it, but because of all this stuff, and I blame myself, I'm also slightly disappointed. And it's for these same reasons, is the internet has fucking, whether you try to avoid it or not, I think just our speculation of ourselves, and then even stuff that I catch online, starts planting those seeds of like, ooh, wouldn't it be cool if? Ooh, wouldn't it be cool this? Maybe this actually means this. And it's the same reason I think for this podcast, we stopped really digging into trailers, because I was doing that with trailers, where I'd start to formulate a better, what I think might be a better idea or a better story. Eventually you go see the movie or see this thing, and it's not anything for what you speculated. That I still could bring up the fucking Force Awakens trailer we talked about and talked about Rey's stick for 45 minutes. It's nothing. It's a stick. Like, this is how I feel for half of this stuff now. So, I don't know. Like, and the other thing I think what this show did right, and what should have been fairly obvious from the start, is the show was called WandaVision. Marvel was very good at writing character stories. This show is about Wanda and Vision, and it succeeds very well in that sense. For anyone that thought this show was going to be anything other than a character study of Wanda and Vision, then you were already in it with different expectations. And I think I have to do a better job just personally trying to keep out all of the other theories and like just take the show for what it is and not build these things up in my head for what this show could give us. And just kind of go with it.
So,
which is fair, but I think that can be forgiven to a certain extent, because I do not think I'm going to go into Falcon and Winter Soldier in 10 days, or by the time you guys are hearing this, it's, coming this Friday probably.
Yeah.
With those same expectations or with that same mindset. I'm expecting that to be a fairly self-contained 6 to 8 episode story, and it's something to tell you what's happening between the pages.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll have, some loose tissue to other things later on, but I think with Wanda being a slight exception, because we were told from the very first time this project was announced publicly, from the mouth of the Feige, that this will feed directly into Doctor Strange.
Right.
That is how he introduced the project.
Right.
So you're already going in with that. And as you go along, I think fairly there are 3 or 4 things that occur throughout the show that don't seem that irrational for people to think that they could mean something broader.
Right.
I think definitely the level of everything we all got into went way too far.
Well, I think the movie spoiled us. We're used to the MCU being in movies where they have the budget and the time to do things like that. They pay off the stuff that they lay breadcrumbs for. So maybe just the way they produce the television shows or these series is different. Maybe they don't have the budget that... Well, obviously they probably don't have the budget that the movies do. They are expensive shows and series compared to other shows and series, but from a movie budget standpoint, it's nowhere near what they're costing to make this stuff. So maybe they just can't bring in those actors. Or at the same time, it is their show. They don't want to be distracted by other characters that pop up or cameos or any of that stuff like that. So that could factor into it too. We're just used to seeing that in every other Marvel movie where there's a cameo or some sort of end credit scene that's going to set up the next one and show someone else in there. Like, by the time we got to Civil War, think of how many characters spun off into Civil War from other movies. Like, that was mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
See, but for me, you do have all that going on. Because we get introduced to Monica as an adult who's going to be Photon. We see how she got her powers. Her origin story is essentially happening in this show. We didn't know that was coming.
Right.
That's something we got. We got the origin story for Photon. We got cameos from Darcy, from Jimmy Woo, from like
Fair point. Yeah.
This
Very
stuff
true.
was happening. It just wasn't what people wanted.
Right.
It wasn't. People were like, "Oh, the X-Men, Fantastic Four. They want these big, huge reveals," and those are big, huge reveals that are going to take time, especially with them just having got the purchase put through. Like, it's
Yeah.
So getting what we got, I think, was good. Did I want to see some kind of nod to the X-Men or something? Yeah. Would I have loved to seen it for the Fantastic Four? Yeah. Am I upset that I didn't? No, not really. Like, it's like, okay, but it'll happen. They're still happening. Those things are still going to be coming from Marvel at some point.
Right.
We just didn't get the breadcrumb here to lead us there.
That's even when we talked before, I think we tried to rationalize it too, that these things are not cast for whatever. Like, X-Men has not been talked about since they got Fox. The only thing we have from Fantastic Four is that they're making a movie, and we have a tentative release date. That's it, and a director. We have a director for that. Like, there's no way in hell they cast those characters already.
And I'm sure from the moment that probably even before, I gotta imagine people started in those offices, started their own fan casting before they ever had the rights to it. And the moment that they got them, they said, okay, now what can we actually turn into a business reality?
Right.
Those things are already happening behind the scenes. They have to be. But because it's not part of the public slate whatsoever, there's no reason for us to think that, like I said, it's a broad answer to some of the questions that you're asking already. Did you enjoy it? Yes. The reason I think I have to go back and just sort of binge through it is I would like to enjoy it again, knowing that I don't have to worry about analyzing anymore, and take it in again and just see if I enjoy it anymore. Not that I didn't immensely. It's like, can I take this from a 97 to a 98 or 99?
Right. Yeah.
We all did that to ourselves, and so we probably all impacted the enjoyment we were having. Now that I can just I know I'm not disappointed whatsoever. I just know that I might have a different enjoyability experience knowing what it's not, which is fine, because what it is still amazing and great.
And that's typically like when we do movie reviews for like new releases and stuff, we try to talk about movies when they come out. I always try to see the movie twice, because the first time, we do the same thing where you're digging into it, trying to pick up every little thing that you can, and then you almost have to see it again just to let it sort of like wash over you and just let it happen. Or, the viewing experience could be vice versa, where you let it wash over you the first time and then dig into it the second time. Either way, there are two separate viewing experiences to be had between a first and second viewing. So you're right. I think watching the show again from start to finish would be a very good thing to do, and I'm gonna have to do that myself too. So just kind of like general thoughts, I guess. What did you guys think of the cast? Because I think, and we talked about it before, but even more prevalent, I think, by the end of it too. Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany deserve some kind of award, especially Elizabeth Olsen. I think she did fucking phenomenal in this series.
They're both fantastic at what they do.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's shown, Paul Bettany has taken some questionable movies in his time, and he still kind of carries them, even though they're, like, Priest.
Yeah.
And things that were just not... Yeah, like, things that were just not good, he still manages to carry. And, Elizabeth Olsen comes out of the shadow of her sisters to actually be this incredible actress.
Which
wasn't just a child star.
Let's debate this for a second. Arguably, to people who are younger than 30 or definitely 25, good chance they don't even know who the Olsen twins are.
Yeah, she is the only Olsen as far as anyone's concerned.
Like, to them, she's probably not the younger sister of twins who were child actors, etc. She is her.
Michelle Tanner. I mean, they were Michelle Tanner. That's
right.
It. I mean, they did a bunch of stuff after that, but
they're basically just doing like clothing line and stuff now, aren't they? Aren't they like
fashion? I have no idea
designers
what
or something.
Yeah,
I know they had video games at one time.
Oh. Just like all the Barbie video games that are probably floating around.
You know, to my understanding, actually, there's a YouTube series I watched that was like randomly reviewing them. There's one of them that's actually not a bad platformer.
A Barbie game? Or Elizabeth
Olsen
or
twins.
the Olsen twins. Okay.
Yeah. Evidently one of them's not a bad platformer. The rest of them are complete dog shit like you would expect. But
yeah.
one of them, I think it was the Game Boy one, is not a bad platformer. But nonetheless, she came out of it. She's fantastic. Catherine Hahn did fantastic. Although I felt like the last episode there when they try to make her evil, I don't know if she's just too likable. You know, like it. I don't know.
I think I know. Like I have too many memories of her from Anchorman and Bad Moms and those kinds of roles to 100% buy her dark side yet.
Yeah.
Just because of that exposure bias, but not to say that she didn't do a good job at all. She was great.
Yeah, I think she yeah, I'm with you. I think she almost has a little bit like the Melissa McCarthy syndrome. Like, you know her in that type of role, and that's the only thing you think of when you think of Catherine Hahn. And they use that to the advantage at the first part of the series because that's the same role she's playing, so it fits what you know her of.
Yeah.
So when she makes the turn, it's still a little bit tough to buy, but you know, I rolled with it. It's fine.
I'm with Mike though. I think like in episode like 7 and 8, I'm like, okay, she's basically, I don't want to say like she's just playing a dick, but she's sort of on that cruel end of power.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in that last one, they tried to, turn her to try to make her a more believably evil personality. And I wasn't 100% there yet.
So we'll spin into this because this is kind of one of my questions. I'm trying to think about it again, and maybe this would help if, like Josh said, if we watch the series from start to finish. Trying to just think about the last couple episodes and what Agatha and Catherine Hahn's character does. What is her plan? What is she trying to accomplish? Because I'm still fuzzy on what she's trying to do. Is she just after Wanda's power? Is she just trying to learn how she did it? That's the goal?
She wants Wanda's power. She wants to consume Wanda's power like she did to the witches that made her as powerful as she is.
So is it just a selfish, like, I just want to be the most powerful witch, that's it?
I think
she
so.
Wants
yeah.
to be more powerful. I don't know.
She didn't. She obviously didn't realize fully what Wanda really was. Like I at some point at the beginning of it, the one thing I'm still not positive of, and this is like a sidebar question, but I think it relates to this. So in what is it, like episode 7 or 8, they show us Wanda. They show the origin. Wanda finding the town, finding the property. She breaks.
Right.
That is one thing that I think we all sort of figured was going to come into play in some part of this.
Yeah.
Right.
How, when, why does Agatha get in there? Is she already there? They don't show her sensing something and coming into it. They never show her crossing the barrier inside. How she ends up inside the Mirage, so to speak, like in the Hex. Do they ever explain that?
No.
Well, at the start of it, you were able to enter freely. You just couldn't leave.
I
mean, if I had to guess, I'm sort of expecting, if she's like sort of on the witch level of like, I think if she's that powerful, looking to suck witch powers off of people, I think from what Wanda did, I think that's enough to save it, Mike.
I'm sorry, you say suck witch powers.
This is the first thing that came to mind. But, you know, whenever Wanda created the Hex, I think that was probably enough for her to feel it, maybe. And I'm under the impression she went there because of that. Like, the same reason we all was sort of expecting Doctor Strange to show up, I think that's why Agatha showed up.
She's drawn to it in some way. She understands it's there. So, okay.
Right.
I just...
She noticed that it happened. Like, it created a surge of power that a witch would notice.
Detectable thing. Okay. I can buy that. I just wanted to, number one, make sure that I didn't miss that part. But number two, I think it would not have been that difficult for them. I think that's a strange detail for them not to have illustrated, but it's kind of an important one. But I think her idea was whether she was there already, she came into it, etc. She obviously knew who Wanda was in terms of you are one of the Avenger girls.
Yeah.
She knows her as that. And as she sort of reveals to her, she suspected that much of what she had seen her do, and then as she learns that backstory in episode 8, I think, of things that she had done in her past from being a child, she starts to recognize, oh, no, whatever you think you are, Wanda, you're actually a witch.
Yeah.
And I think she suspected that at first, but yeah, I think her ultimate goal is learn about her, because she's not entirely sure yet. And then once she understands, especially when she understands what, Agnes feels she actually is, then yes, the goal is get rid of you, take what is yours for my own.
Well, for the next step too, because when she's finally defeated, she says to Wanda, like, you don't know what you've done here. You're going to need my help later. Like, she seems to know something else is coming. So is she trying to get power for herself to keep at bay whatever's coming? Does she...
Well, that's exactly why I think the explanation as to how and why Agatha got there in the first damn place is important, because it could help understand her motivation better.
Right.
Which they may be saving for later.
I suppose.
Because if they tell you now, they reveal the big reveal of whatever it is, if there's a big reveal at all.
Well, it depends. I think, like, her what becomes her motivation towards the end of the story could easily be very different as to how and why she wandered onto the scene to begin with. Her reason for pursuing her in the first place, evolves as she learns more about her and witnesses all of it. But I think lamely, the only thing I can come to the conclusion of, because we have not yet been given more, is yes, she wanted to take this ability of Wanda's for herself, and just so she has it. And for what purpose, I don't think we know yet.
Yeah, because I guess my gut reaction was, well, if she knows what's coming and she thinks that if she's telling Wanda, you're going to need my help whenever this thing happens, why is she there trying to suck Wanda's power? Why didn't she just go there to ask Wanda for help to stop whatever the hell's coming? Like, if we're just going to end up right back there to begin with, it just seems like wasted energy here.
Yeah, and I think that's dependent on what she meant by that, because if it could be the difference of, Wanda, I need to take this from you because one of us has to deal with what you've done, versus Wanda, what might come of this doesn't have to happen, but because you don't know what you have and what you're doing with it, it will be a side effect. But
okay, so give me your stuff because I'm the experienced one. I can do it, you can't.
Yes, and I'm telling you there could be side effects to this. If I had it, I know either how to avoid them or how to mitigate them and deal with them. You don't even realize. But that might not have been the reason she's there in the first place.
So the reason she's there in the first place could be a whole nothing burger kind of thing here, from one respect, in that at the end there, what we see happening really is Wanda absorbs her power.
Right.
Is that not, like, I'm under the assumption that's what we see happen, right? Wanda takes her power away from her.
Yes.
I believe so. I agree with that.
Okay. So in taking her power away, maybe she's simply telling Wanda, you don't understand what you've just absorbed from me. You don't understand the power that you've just taken, and you have no idea what's about to happen to you because of what you just took out of me.
Okay, yeah, I didn't interpret it that way, but I could see that. I could spin it that way.
Same.
In just so much as that there's not necessarily like that reveal or that reason that she came there to take the power. I'd say that's a possibility, is that, you know, it's going to create a problem for Wanda inside Wanda.
See, I think all these Mephisto theories we were spinning about last time we talked, I'm like, that's what's coming next. Like, the two of them have to fight Mephisto. That's what I'm banking on now.
And again, that post-credits scene, I could see that being what's going on there.
Yeah.
because you hear the kids scream and she's looking at the book, and I mean, I don't know where else that could lead,
Right.
but I guess we find out later, as opposed to trying to guess again at what it is and just get it slapped in our face that it's not.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, do you think Agatha's tease of "You'll need me"? Do you think she's going to be in Doctor Strange also? Like, we know Scarlet Witch is going to be there.
who knows? Is it going to be then that she's needed, or is it some other time?
Or are they saving her for like season 2 of WandaVision? Because we still don't know where Vision went. He fucked off too. Like,
Yes, thank you.
Well,
I asked 3 different people this.
in terms of season 2, I will say that on Disney Plus it is labeled as the series finale.
oh, okay. So we think it might be one and done.
Yeah, as far as I understand, series finale means that's it.
Right. So maybe they're trying to label these as mini series instead of actual like TV series.
Well, some of them might be recurring shows.
True.
See,
yeah.
I can see certain ones being recurring and other ones being a one-off like this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see Loki being multiple seasons. But I could see Falcon and Winter Soldier being multiple seasons.
That definitely leads to like the buddy cop type of show.
And yes, Vision, I think, there's 2 major things that this show accomplished in terms of its purpose for being a part of the Marvel universe and what they're doing. 3, if you consider Photon being, like Monica getting her powers and all that. But first, you have Scarlet Witch becoming the Scarlet Witch, getting the book and all that starting, and the other is resurrecting Vision. And they found a way to do it.
Which is something, you go back to the discussions we had, I was convinced Vision was not making it out of this show.
The version of Vision that was in the show did not. But we didn't know about the other version of Vision not actually even like existing in the same way that we thought it did.
Right.
We thought she took it.
Yeah,
they
right.
led us to believe that.
Up until episode 8, I think we were all working with the assumption that Vision's body is in the bubble. Like, that's the Vision we've seen. Somehow that's associated with the Vision that's in the Hex. We didn't realize they were separated, that, he was created from nothing and that the body's still outside the Hex. So that was a big, like, oh, Jesus, okay, now we could... And then I was convinced that the 2 of them were going to merge or something by the end of this, and that's how we'd get Vision to survive.
It is.
Well, they didn't merge. He just messed with his memory a little bit.
I think Brian means more on like an actual like
just see them both. Like, Vision in the Hex is like the soul of Vision. White Vision is just the body of Vision. I expected both of them to literally just merge together, and then he, would get colorful again and then be fine.
I think we'll see the color come back next time we
eventually.
see him.
Yeah, I think now that his memory's been unlocked. Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption.
But yeah, I really like the way they went about it, saying that it was the Mind Stone that allowed it to happen. And it makes sense. Vision is really just a supercomputer with feelings.
Yeah.
So unlocking the right files, I guess, makes it so he can remember everything.
Yeah.
I did have a moment in that scene in the finale there where she laughed. Well, I laughed when she explained, it's a very sweet scene. Just before the house goes away, and like his last thing, and he asks, what am I? And speaking of, like, digressing for a moment back to like the accolades and critique discussion, that is one of those scenes. Like, there's like 4 or 5 scenes out of the series that I could probably pick out and say that is critically worthy.
Yeah.
Is that like goodbye scene in the house. As the wall is coming toward them. But he asked, what am I? And her reply, she says, you were the part of the Mind Stone that was in me. The thing that was retained by her essence, her body, her etc., all that, due to the experimentation and whatnot. She basically extracted that from herself and molded him from that, because that was also the source of his being, in a way.
I guess I interpreted it differently, in that she had the connection to specifically the Mind Stone in him when she had to destroy it.
Oh, you think?
So you could, I'm interpreting it as like that connection there was a piece of him going into her, and then when
Oh,
she
okay.
finally
She's
created the
just bringing
bubble,
it back
that piece
out.
that was in her, she just finally let it out.
Okay, so I could buy that, but it doesn't change my reaction because my immediate thought was it's like slightly different, but my immediate thought was the last Harry Potter movie, them explaining that, Harry, you were the Horcrux that, Voldemort didn't mean to make, the piece of him that lives in you,
Yeah,
and then bringing it out. But it was a very creative way to make a difficult thing believable.
yeah, yeah. I mean, all things considered, I like the way, like, a lot of the theories we were trying to figure out, like how Vision's there, how he fits into what's going on, like ultimately the way they explained all that stuff, I'm completely fine with. I think that worked a lot, like a hell of a lot for the story. I was a lot, definitely not disappointed with the way they explained it away. Um, so someone else's plan that I was like, what the fuck were they trying to figure out was Director Haywood's plan, the sword guy,
Mm-hmm.
because by the end of it, I feel like he's all over the map in the finale. Like he starts off the show seemingly trying to stop Wanda, just because she creates this event that's fine. That's not supposed to be there. So of course an authority figure is going to be like, okay, we have to put a stop to this because it's getting out of control. Then it changes to, no, we have to kill Wanda. Then it was changing to trying to use Wanda to power the Vision, and then now it's just kill everybody. Like by the end of that, he's ready to kill kids. He's ready to kill Monica. He's just shooting anybody that gets in his way.
Yeah. I didn't understand his character arc in any way. I think if there's personal opinion, I think if there's a low point to the series, it's the writing for that character just doesn't make sense to me.
I think he started off fine, and I could buy a lot of like what
Right.
as a government agency, for someone that has survived 5 years where half of the world's population was gone, and suddenly you're there when everyone comes back, and then 9 days later, this fucking bubble shows up in Westview, New Jersey, and you have no idea what the fuck's going on. I understand his motivation halfway through the show, and then it just all goes to shit.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
Like
pretty
halfway
succinct.
through, everything
Yeah.
seems normal. That's how a government agency would react to that no matter what.
Yes, and seeing,
Like,
I could even buy him seeing Wanda as a threat, again, because, like, you've dealt with all this shit for 5 years, and suddenly someone comes back that can destroy whatever the hell they want to, and you have to somehow deal with that.
And it's also not that long ago that, like, the Sokovia Accords and all that was signed in, and she was considered a threat even by members of her own team.
Right.
So it's something that I understand why they're at mentally with her where they're at, but at the same time, when, like you said, when he takes the turn towards it's all gotta go, and he just becomes this pure villain all of a sudden. It seemed like he was just a government dick
Right.
that they put in for a good portion of the show, and then he just turns full villain out of nowhere.
Right.
Where, like, his intentions seem to be good for most of this series, and then they just turn on their head.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
So it's like you think about
So-
how where he started, where he ultimately gets to at the end of the show, and by the end of it, it's just like, oh, he's just doing all of this to power Vision. But no, they definitely didn't start the show that way. It's just that's where we ended up. So it's like you start to think about how we got there, and nothing makes sense.
Well, I mean, I guess the other thing for me that doesn't make sense is how they got to Vision being where he's at that quickly. So we go from... Do we know what day it is after people come back after Thanos is defeated? How long after that? Well, I mean... But they go from her trying to pop in to see him
Right.
to considering stealing him while Vision is in pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, they've been working on him for 5 years, but he is still in pieces just days before they have him put back together completely.
Yeah.
Which, if we were led to believe Shuri, there was trillions of connections to deal with.
Not to mention
Well,
his body
I
is
feel like-
vibranium. So where did they replace the vibranium that they took apart and then had to piece back together?
Well, the part of his mind though, I think that was specifically talking about like the overlaid consciousnesses that they discussed. Like they were trying to recreate that without the Mind Stone. So if you
Right.
don't care what is left behind, they probably skipped that part entirely. They didn't, care to reconstruct a unique consciousness. So they probably skipped that
Okay.
part entirely.
I don't know. It still seems like a very fast timeline to reconstruct a synthetic being like that
Agreed.
we've seen torn to pieces. Again, if they had just said, they had him or they didn't show him in pieces or anything like that, then yeah, all right, fine, you got him back together.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
like-
led to believe the whole show takes place over like 2 weeks.
Right.
And
Is that a believable timeline to put him back together?
Because I had this conversation with somebody at work too, and we both agreed no, that's it. There's no way that would happen if you're trying to take the time for what it is. But we both just kind of like wrote it off like, well, it's a TV show, they have to get this moving, so we're just gonna like more or less let it slide. I guess is where I ultimately ended up on it.
Unless that engineer is Reed Richards and
Yeah.
he's the one who put Vision together.
The only thing that really is hard to jump off on that is aside from the like some varying things I heard where like the beginning of the show starts like a week after Tony's funeral. It's like very quick. But to me, this is coinciding with Monica's return. And I don't see Monica going from rematerializing in a hospital room chair to I'm in uniform at the front line in a week.
I think
So-
they said
Sure.
in the episode where she goes back to Sword that it was 3 weeks later.
Okay. Even that seems a little like that even to me seems like a little unnecessarily rushed. For
Because I think he
believability.
makes it a point to say like you're the first one back, and I
Yeah.
didn't think 3 weeks was a long enough time. You could have taken
Okay.
more or something like that. But she
Gotcha.
came back anyway.
So if that's about where we are, it is strange that yes, they apparently since the end of Infinity War they have Vision. Again, we know we talked about this. We don't know why they had Vision's body, and like not the rest of the enduring Avengers or anybody, but they've had this thing for 5 years. They have it in pieces. He allows her to see it because he thinks that her ability directly will be able to ignite it and act as the jump switch for it. Either it doesn't or she chooses not to. And then very quickly, as soon as they get this Wanda powered drone dripping with Wanda power residue on it, they're able to engineer that within like 48 hours to be, oh, there it is. That was the only thing we've been waiting for. Everything else is now in place. Hook it up to the machine. Now we have White Vision.
Well, I guess it all comes down. I
So-
didn't even think about that. It's like he's trying to egg her on in the operating table in that scene when she quote unquote
Oh, yeah.
steals him to try to power him up. I didn't even
of course
think
it
about
is.
that until just now when you said that. So that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, he
But I
like
guess
eggs her on / he's like trying to use like vague suggestion, like without even saying like you can do this,
Right.
almost like alluding to the fact like you could do it, of course. Why wouldn't you? In a way that she's like, what? I can do that? What?
Yeah.
So here's something I hadn't considered that I'm also going to be like, well, I don't know how I feel about this because we just talked about why they have Vision's body, and something we didn't talk about is that they got Vision's body out of Wakanda. They didn't just get Vision's body in some random field somewhere where that fight happened. That was
Mhm.
in Wakanda.
Which
The
I'm
Wakandans are not exactly open to just being like, oh yeah, you want this vibranium being that was existing on our soil? Come take
Yeah.
him.
which I've presumed somebody else of the team, took him with them. You know, Steve or something, like the rest of the surviving team, like took him to, because he doesn't belong there. He belongs at, you know, Avengers headquarters or something.
That's what I
And
sort of assumed also.
it somehow went from that point to getting to them in the past, because by that point, I also think like T'Challa, the whole royal family's gone. It was confirmed that even their mother got blipped. So T'Challa, Shuri, and the queen and you know, the queen mother are all gone. So they don't have leadership.
Right.
So after all that, you know, shock and aftermath, yeah, it's easy for me to believe at some point, you know, Natasha and Steve take Vision with them once at whatever point they finally leave. And then, yeah, it's just fill in the blanks somewhere along the way it makes its way to Sword.
But also, I think as far as what they were doing with the body, I feel like it was fairly obvious they were trying to reverse engineer Vision's tech.
Yes.
Which they might have even succeeded in doing, and that's why Sword sort of changed direction. Like when Mana comes back, she seems to be surprised in what the direction Sword is going and what they're working on. Which I'm led to believe they used, you know, whatever they learned from Vision's corpse is what they've used to move forward on whatever tech they're using. Probably weapons related, I would, if I had to guess, considering they want to use him as a weapon.
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense.
We had talked earlier about how we were trying to decide whether or not we wanted Wanda to end up being the villain of this show. So are you sort of satisfied that the way they handled that?
I mean, I never felt like I wanted Wanda to be the villain. I don't think I was.
Well, I said, yeah, whether or
boat.
not we wanted her to be the villain.
Oh,
but
yeah. I mean, I was fine with how it went. Because I was, like, I personally was not really okay with turning Wanda into a villain in my own mind. Like, it's not, like, I don't feel like she was a villain as much as she was a victim of herself as well. You know what I mean? Like, she made these other people into victims, yes, but she was also a victim of really just not having control.
Right.
And so is she a villain? Not really. I think she plays more, I'm trying to think of the right term, like an unwilling negative participant.
Well, I mean, ultimately, she's grieving. This is the show of her dealing with the grief of all of her losses. I think I still was expecting them to lean a little bit more into, I guess, the consequences of her actions, because I still think a lot of it felt very selfish to me for her. And I wanted them to play up that part of it. And they got to, I think, by the end. Like, when they finally start freeing the town and you start hearing what has been going on with them for as long as they've been in there, that starts to get a little bit horrifying. But I think I was expecting them to maybe to lean into that a little bit more. I kind of wanted more of that.
Yeah. How do I say? Given what they were establishing in the first half, I don't necessarily think I was rooting for her to be the villain, but with the way that they established it, I didn't want there to be a cop-out for why she was not responsible.
Yes, that's a good way. Yes, that's a good way to put it.
And I also think, and along with that, I am still happy how it turned out. I am not upset or disappointed or bothered by it. I think an interesting direction to take, and they still might do this, is treating her in the same way as the Hulk. And Mike, the way you were talking about it got me thinking about this, which is she doesn't necessarily have to be a villain in order for her to be a threat.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
And I even going like into whatever this is apparently, I also, maybe this could be a jumping point to another piece, but yes, I was expecting the potential leap from whatever, like I was expecting to get much more of a clear idea of what Doctor Strange is going to be from the ending of this.
Yeah.
As opposed to, it now feels like we will still need an Act 1 in Doctor Strange to explain to us what the problem is in the first place. Whereas I thought the initial introduction to it would at least be prevalent and understood to some degree here. It wasn't. Yeah. It's fine. It's okay. But
I think her dealing with the book is an introduction to that. I think what you see going on with her in the
more
book
of an illusion.
is
Yeah, more of an illusion. Whereas I guess I thought it would almost be much like literally more of like a cliffhanger, like the end of Spider-Man. You know, here Peter Parker is his identity. What the fuck? And it cuts
Yeah.
that stark. I think I was expecting or built up in my head that it would be something like that, or like literally we're leaving you off in a threat moment. Again, that's
Right.
it's not bad because it didn't do that. That was just my headcanon in advance.
Right.
And because of that, it would have positioned her at that point to be a threat, potentially, or as related to the problem, as opposed to being the ally hero of it all right from the beginning.
Right.
And it just wasn't positioned that way, and that's fine. That's just where I thought we were going to be.
Since we're sort of talking on it, do we just want to dive into the end credits scenes? Because there were two of them. Now, some people I think watched the show that I talked to afterward did not realize there was a second credit scene. So that's the one we're actually talking about with her in the cabin and reading the Darkhold and stuff.
that kind of confused me. So we see her in the cabin, and then we see her like. Why is there two of her?
So I watched it twice because I was sort of half paying attention when I first watched it, and then like I had seen that the her go in the kitchen and like make a tea, like the pot of tea, and then when I kind of like looked down and looked up, she was in costume in the bedroom reading the book, and I was like, wait, what did I miss? And then when I watched it again, they were visible. You definitely see two people, and then I started to think about it, and she's doing what Doctor Strange did. She's reading the book subconsciously, using her magical powers.
Her astral form or whatever.
Strange did that.
But
yeah, she's in the astral form. Okay.
And I thought it was interesting because maybe not, again, don't want to read into things, but the only time they showed us Doctor Strange doing that in his film was when his body was sleeping.
Yes.
She's able to do this while she's awake. Her physical body is able to go off, do what it needs to do, while her astral form is doing something completely separate, and those two consciousnesses are existing simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's an allusion to, like, okay, at least since the one time they showed us Doctor Strange doing it, does that mean that is an advancement in that ability? Is that something he still can't do? Could he do it if he wanted to? Is that giving us some sort of contrast between her abilities and his?
In general, like they're on two different power levels.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not like. Generally speaking, Doctor Strange is very powerful, but he is a tier below in any Marvel universe where you would put the Scarlet Witch. He's just that next tier down from that tippity top tier where you see beings like the Scarlet Witch, the Silver Surfer, and they even above them, there's another tier with other beings.
Mm-hmm.
That I think the only one they've mentioned officially is the Living Tribunal. But you have that going on where I think it's just she's just more powerful than him, and she's able to do things he's not.
They name drop that in the show. Like Agatha tells her, the book says you are more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yep.
Yeah. So, is it going to be a situation where she does something else stupid with the book because she doesn't know what she's doing with it?
Most definitely.
Does she open a gate to hell? And that's literally what could happen if it's the Mephisto route.
Well, I love that we just spent like the first 20 minutes talking about how we shouldn't automatically take the little details and jump to far conclusions.
Yeah, I'm already there.
Is this what we're doing? Yes, those four things. Yeah.
She's definitely opening a gate to hell. It's not. I mean, there's no other possible acceptable thing that happens. If she doesn't open a gate to hell, it sucks.
Well, like Mike likes to do, we're just going to throw shit at the wall and just to have it on record. So if one of us happens to be right somewhere down the line, we can point at this and say, yes, see?
Yeah.
Called it.
Superman crossover. It could happen.
Mike, I sent a text to Brian.
If it happens.
I sent a text to Brian as I was watching the finale and said, you called the Darkhold in our last discussion, and I didn't even occur to me. Good job. And by the end of the episode, I was really, just for his sake, especially since he championed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for so many years, and I didn't get into it till basically they aired the last season last year. I just watched it as like a quarantine show, basically. I was really hoping for his sake that there would be some one sentence thing in Agatha's, like, just to explain, like, where did the Darkhold end, if you will, like in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. storyline, and she has it. So give me like one sentence as to how those two things got bridged, and I think he would have loved that and lost his shit over it, but alas,
I
it did
definitely
not
would
come.
have.
But,
Yes.
I
But
stole this off of whoever it was that had it last on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
anything, like
I had to pry this from
found
their
it in a facility,
fingers or their
came
cold
across
dead
such
hands
and
or something.
such, found myself in this part of the world, just some allusion to it that would have been strong enough that fans of the show would have known what it meant.
Yeah.
But I was really hoping for your sake, Brian, that they would have given you that.
And that's, now because it's confirmed it is the Darkhold, now it still raises the same questions I had the last time. Is it the Darkhold from TV, or is it the MCU's like movie version of the Darkhold? Like, that's still undecided for me.
Oh, I got you.
Because those are still, there's two different ways to spin it. Either they're crafting their own mythology out of this book now, starting here, or it's got a little bit of history from TV and they've brought it into this show. Like, that's where
Right.
I'm still unsure.
Yeah.
I would assume we'll find that out when it turns up next. I don't think that's something like you're gonna have to wonder about
I'm hoping.
as to whether or not it's tied in. Well, I'm saying I think you'll get an answer. I don't know that you're gonna get the answer you want. You know what I mean? But I think you'll get an answer one way or the other based on what happens with it next.
Because, I mean, just visually, the front of the book is different.
Yeah.
Like, they have like almost like an Illuminati type script on the front of the book on the TV show, so it reads almost the same frontward, backward, upside down, right side up, whatever. The one in the show, in WandaVision, is basically just a symbol that can be taken the same way. Like, you switch it around, it looks the same no matter how you look at it, but it's just a symbol. There's not text on the front of the book. So it's definitely designed differently. But, Dark Magic book, I could explain that away as, it changes its shape based on the user or something, something stupid like that. I could buy that.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can change Colonel Rhodes there from one person to another person, the appearance of a book on the outside, it's a very minimally important at all.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
It went through Wanda's barrier, changed its molecular makeup slightly or its visual appearance. Done.
Got a higher budget to make it look better.
Yeah, that's definitely what happened. Yes. It definitely had some added effects that the TV show did not.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, like, you had posed the questions about the dealings with Ghost Rider. Does Ghost Rider come into it? Anytime you're talking about Mephisto, Ghost Rider's a possibility.
Oh, damn it, I forgot we brought that up. That was so far off.
Well, no, but I'm saying, like, still, the Darkhold turns up. It's related.
Yeah.
A lot of these things are related. And, we don't have a slated Ghost Rider movie or show, but it doesn't mean he's not going to show up as a character.
We were
Fingers
close
crossed.
to a
Which
show.
version, do you get? Do you get the Robbie Reyes? Do you get, Johnny Blaze? If we get the multiverse and Nick Cage comes back?
I was just gonna say, I think we need the
There.
multiverse, like the Spider-Man No Way Home version of Ghost Rider.
I mean, I'm down for that.
So we kind of dove into that second scene. What about the first end credit scene, which was Jimmy Woo leading the charge for the FBI, and then we got Monica going into the theater and talking to a Skrull.
I thought that was fun.
I think that's your Captain Marvel 2 lead-in.
Yep. So that you people remember, oh yes, I know we were told before, but she has that relation. She's a little girl. She knows them. Let's remind you. And now she's, the moment she came back, she wanted to get back into space.
Well, let me ask you this: Is Nick Fury in Captain Marvel 2? Do we know that?
I don't think much has been announced about that.
Because the Skrull tells her, your friend knows you've been grounded. He wants to see you.
Well, it could be Kalos or Talos. or-
Talos, yeah.
See, I assumed it was
Talos,
Fury.
Talos.
I assumed she was talking to Fury.
I
Could be
assume
either.
she meant Carol.
And that was a gut reaction too until they used the pronoun he. So it's got to be a
Yeah,
guy.
right.
Probably, yeah.
So yeah,
only-
I thought about I forgot about about Talos. Talos?
I think it's Talos.
Talos.
The only, at least IMDb listed actors for Captain Marvel 2 are Monica, Carol. They've announced Ms. Marvel because she's gonna have her own Disney Plus show. So the young
right.
actress playing
Oh, the
Kamala
Kamala
Khan.
Khan version.
And
Nice.
another actress named Zawe Ashton, who I do not know and does not have a character named. But those are the only 4.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I'm wondering if she'll hit like I don't know when Secret Invasion happens, but if Fury is in Secret Invasion, she might show up there maybe first.
Well, that's slated to be a show as well, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the timeline on whether Secret Invasion or Captain Marvel 2 is first. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I didn't do my research to look at that either, but that's a thought.
Well,
whichever it is, I'd say yes to either one, whichever's next.
I think whatever comes first is fair game. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
at the moment, again, just going by what IMDb has credited professionals with, the only writing credits for Captain Marvel 2 lists the 2 people that says based on characters created by. So, like, the script writers aren't even listed. And yet, I think this thing is supposed to be out, like, next summer. They have a director.
I remember them
that was
announcing a
confirmed.
director. Yeah.
Yeah, but...
Who did they get to direct? Is it
Nia...
It's not. I mean, it's not either of the 2 that did the first one.
No, it's Nia DaCosta, who did the Candyman remake that got delayed that we're waiting to come out, and she has other things, but that's probably the easiest one to point to.
Okay. Well, I would say there's probably a lot going on there that we don't know about in terms of production and things like that, but who knows, maybe they changed their plan. And as far as I knew, there was a lot of those dates that weren't solid.
I mean, it was hard enough
People
to...
were assuming what was assigned to the date. Like, there's a date for a movie, but people were assuming which movie it was going to be.
Well, I'm trying to
as
remember...
opposed to it being official.
Like,
I think
the Disney announcements we covered the one time when they were just tweeting out, like, this is coming, this is, a series that's coming, this is a sort of date that we're getting. Like, they were putting out dates for a lot of that stuff, but I don't remember what all those dates were.
Well, they all got changed.
Not
I mean,
since
this stuff was
December.
hard enough to track even when we had solid release dates for all this stuff. The fact that these things keep changing, I definitely can't keep track of what's coming when.
Yeah, because, I mean, that was... When did they do that? That was, like, last year in the spring, wasn't it?
No,
That was, like, right before everything kind of hit.
Well,
right?
they did one. Yeah, they did one earlier, but then the investors call in December when they announced a bunch of the new projects.
I think that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah,
they did give for some of them that were already known. They did give tentative, at least month target
right.
release dates, like month and year target releases for many of them. I thought Captain Marvel 2 was one of them, but yeah.
I'm not sure, honestly. I thought what you were talking about, Brian, was when they were doing the Disney Plus thing, when they were trying to promo Disney Plus, and they announced like 200 different Disney projects that were all
right.
going on.
Yeah,
at
I was
one time.
thinking Josh had it right. I was thinking the investors call that they were announcing all those Star Wars shows coming to Disney Plus and stuff. They did all that with the investor call.
Right.
But I actually thought that, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised that the character that leads Monica into the theater ended up being a Skrull, and from what it looked like, it might have been the same female Skrull who's like Talos' wife. Maybe.
I'd have to watch
I can't
Captain
quite
Marvel
tell.
again, and
Yeah.
like she plays such a small role in that movie, like Talos' wife. Like
Yeah.
she's there, but
When it's that
she's not really a focal point.
I think Talos' wife is the same character who ends up being Maria
Hill.
Hill in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
At the end, they revealed that Fury and
Okay.
Maria Hill were Talos and his
Right.
wife the whole time, and I think that female Skrull is the same one that we see with Monica now at the end of this. I could be wrong. Maybe it's neither here nor there. But I thought she was going to lead her in there and I thought Carol was going to be there.
Okay, yeah.
I figured they were using, like, the moment she takes her away from everything and they go in the theater, I'm like, oh, okay, they're isolating Monica. This is going to be somehow Captain Marvel centric. And I actually thought, yeah, for one way or another, Carol was going to be there. Like, welcome back. That's, because they really haven't even established if they've seen each other since she blipped back in.
Right.
And they also alluded to possibly some tension between them or something. Something in Monica related to that era of her life, or Carol or her mother or something. Could have just been as simple as, that one episode where they, like, mention Carol and she gets stiff. And it could have just been because that reminds her of her mom and her mom passed away. I'm not sure. It could be that simple,
Right.
But
right.
That's
well,
maybe
like
left to be
I think
discovered.
I said then, too, was that as far as we know, the last time they saw each other was when she was a teeny little girl.
That could be it, too.
And Carol left, and maybe she's just pissed that Carol never came back.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know. We have no
I think that
information.
That's going to be probably part of the relationship that will get explored in the sequel.
Yeah.
Speaking
one
real
thing.
quick of
Go
real
ahead.
quick of that, because we're talking about the theater that Monica's taken into. Someone else, the director discussion that I mentioned, I listened to recently. Someone who was interviewing him pointed this out, and I never would have caught this in a million years. And this was so creative of the producers. Once the spell is broken on the town, the marquee on the movie theater is a reference to Rutger Hauer's character in Blade Runner.
Okay.
What does it say?
I
didn't even pay any attention to it.
yeah, I'd have to go back to find, I think whatever his character name is in Blade Runner, I think his name is on the marquee. And there's some piece of dialogue that someone says that then relates that, like, his, like, famous, like, just before he dies scene, and
Yeah, the speech in the rain.
right, in the rain, the tears in the rain, and all that stuff. Someone says something that alludes to that. I'd have to go back and listen to the interview piece again, but it's like, for whoever put that together on their own, that was genius.
Yeah, I missed it.
I paid no attention to the billboard. I didn't even... Wow. That's interesting. It's one of the nice little tidbits that get thrown into some things sometimes, because that's somebody that's a super fan of Blade Runner and was like, you know what? We're going to do this. And was it the director of that episode? Was it a writer of the show? Who knows? Who knows who's responsible?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know, because I like the cut of their jib.
One thing I kind of want to revisit, sort of how we opened and, like, our expectations and stuff like this. I think one of the points I wanted to make was that, yes, a lot of it is our fault, I think, for extrapolating theories and really digging into some of that stuff. But I will place the blame on Marvel for one specific thing, and that is casting Evan Peters in the show. Because
that was just to dick with us.
Yeah, there is, if he turns out to ultimately be nothing, like, who the hell is Ralph Boner? Nobody. No bearing in what the show is.
He's a strong man who grew up with the last name Boner.
Fair.
That creates a strong person.
But you don't cast him in this show as Quicksilver and not have everyone go, what the fuck is happening? Fox's X-Men are coming. Like, they did that to us on purpose, so I'm completely
Absolutely.
blaming Marvel for that shit.
Yeah, I mean, they knew the buzz that would create putting him there, and that's why they did it. But they did it in an underhanded way, and I actually kind of liked how they handled it at the end, as opposed to opening up this can of worms that the multiverse would be if it was that version of Pietro, which is just Peter in those movies. But if it was actually him, that opens up a really big can of worms that they then have to deal with in a narrative that I don't blame them for not wanting to.
See, I really thought Marvel had the balls to do it, and that's why I was putting a lot of weight there.
I personally, I like the idea of it because, first of all, if they were going to take one single character out of those movies and bring them into these movies,
Psylocke.
they chose the one.
Yeah, it was an opportunity that they just couldn't pass up. Like whoever had the idea,
Right.
they're like, we could do this. This is the only way it would make sense, and it's the only one we can get away with in this way. I agree with
Yeah.
you that
Right.
they probably realized through some part of production of what the side effect of something like that could be in the minds of viewers. But it was still like they can't erase the, previous 20 years of filmmaking on these properties. So the best they can do is play fun with it. And they did.
Right.
Yeah.
Not fun enough, though, because they didn't. I think I said during the episode when we discussed him showing up. Was that the first episode we recorded?
Yeah, because we started
It was
after
right after
5.
Yeah.
Right. So we discussed that, and I said then, I don't remember my exact words, but if we don't get a Quicksilver slow-mo music compilation scene, 0 out of 10. Which I do have to stand by my word on my final rating of the show. You brought this guy back. He's famous as a character in those movies for those scenes. They bring him in for those scenes and then they send him on his way, except for like the last fight with Apocalypse. You never see him again. Days of Future Past, he's there, he does the thing, they laugh, it's funny, he's gone.
Right.
They do the same thing in Apocalypse. He saves them from the explosion, that's all, and then he's gone. Here, you have this opportunity to put him in this 90s setting and do this and just continue that trend, and they don't. And it was just disappointing.
I think it was...
That I
it
am
was,
truly disappointed by.
But it had to be, in retrospect, it probably had to be an intentional use because you had to... That would even more solidify the parallels of who he is. That he is Quicksilver from the Fox X-Men
Right.
universe. And,
I mean,
and,
it all
and to
gets wrote
break-
off as Ralph Boner at the end, though, because of
I
the
know.
control
I know.
going on. And he could have been running around the neighborhood doing menial tasks to keep Wanda happy. And during this sequence, it didn't have to be him saving the day. It could have
I
been
agree. I
him
agree, but
under
I-
mind control as Pietro running around collecting pumpkin seeds. Who gives a shit what he's doing? But
I think
just
doing
running
it-
around doing all these random tasks. Maybe he's why everybody's getting their lawn cut.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. Like it would have just been a fun scene, and it didn't have to have a deeper narrative meaning. They were writing off everything he did as Ralph Boner anyways.
Yeah.
Fair.
I don't know if this is going to spawn some sort of larger discussion, but Ian told me to bring it up. So one of the
Oh,
previous
boy.
episodes we did, Ian shared with us a bit of what his mom thought of the show.
Oh, okay.
So I guess he followed up with her around the finale, and he said, you better put this in the show. So she texted him,
Oh, God.
one night over the weekend, basically saying, I'm going to bed, I'm going to watch WandaVision and go to bed. The next
Before you-
message
before
after
you-
that,
Before you share this, can I don't know if raise the question. I move that we consider texts from our parents related to the projects that we're talking about to become a normal segment.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, if you want to poke your parents for what they think of what's going on and in the pop culture sphere like this, yeah, I'm all for it.
All right.
I gotta find somebody and call them dad so I can ask them questions because I don't text my parents.
So yeah, she's gonna watch WandaVision. She goes to bed. The next morning, the literal next text after that is, I did not like how WandaVision ended.
Okay.
Which brings me to something that I sort of want to discuss, which is,
Great.
and it's maybe a point we talked about before. Can someone who has not watched any other MCU stuff actually enjoy this show for what it is? Or do you need to see the other properties to have that backstory, to have that stuff, to get into this show? Granted, I don't know if she's into that stuff to begin with. Maybe this stuff is
okay,
not...
that's what I was going to ask was, do we know if she's seen the other stuff
I know she
or
has not seen the other MCU stuff. Ian has said that. But what I don't know is
Okay.
if his mom actively seeks this stuff out. If that's even in her wheelhouse of stuff to watch.
Okay.
But I also think it's an interesting social experiment and something that it's why we do the whole virgin watches for certain things. Like someone that has not been exposed to this stuff before, can they come to
Sure.
it without any experience or backstory and still get the same enjoyment out of it as someone else does? And, we've grown up with all this stuff. We've watched all 25 movies or whatever the hell is in this MCU now, and we've been waiting for this show to come out, so we have all that backstory going in. Same thing with The Mandalorian.
I was
I'm
grown
curious
up
about
when it
people that
started,
don't
but-
watch Star Wars watching The Mandalorian, but it's the same kind of idea. Someone that just starts with this show because it's on Disney Plus, it's in the zeitgeist, people are talking about it, they want to watch it, but then they ultimately come out of it saying, I don't know what the hell I just watched.
Yeah, on that respect, I'd say WandaVision, no. Mandalorian, yes.
As far as needing backstory to watch one or the other.
As far as can somebody that's never seen it before enjoy
Okay.
it? WandaVision, I would say no. It's not going to make sense in the terms of the entire show. They may be able to enjoy an episode or two at the start of the show when they're hopping around and they're like seeing the different old sitcoms pop up and things like that, and have that fun part of it. When they start to dig into the meatier narrative of what's really going on, it's not going to make any sense. Whereas
Yeah,
The Mandalorian, I think you don't need the background.
Yeah, I think I largely agree with that, because I was even telling Nina, it's like, well, at the very least, I feel like you'd need to watch Infinity War and Endgame before watching this show. But to even get the
Yeah.
enjoyment out of those two movies, it's like, well, you kind of need to watch all the other stuff before that because of what's happened to these characters up to that point and what's going on with everybody else. And like that might satisfy Wanda and Vision, but like the other characters that are in Infinity War and Endgame, you need all their stuff to really appreciate those movies. So it gets to be very compounded. So yeah, I agree with you. My thing is, yes, I say Mandalorian you could probably jump into. This show specifically, I think you need to watch MCU stuff, which is a tall order for some people if they want to get into this. And maybe at the very least, if they come out of this saying, I'm not quite sure what happened, but I like this show as a whole, that will prompt people to go back on Disney Plus and start watching some of this. Hell, you finish every episode of WandaVision you finish, it wants you to watch Age of Ultron. It pops up next every time I've watched one of these episodes. So hopefully someone pushes
does.
that on themselves.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it's not just dependent on the previous actual storylines, which to a fair degree it definitely is, but the emotional weight of why she is so sad, why she is reacting this way, and why the degree that it is getting to her this much is reasonable.
Yes.
That that you can connect to that, whether you agree or disagree with how someone, handling grief would choose to do these things, is beside the point.
Right.
Following why it makes sense that somebody would take these actions. If you don't have that aspect of the background, you would, I agree, you would need, if you just wanted this, you have to do Ultron, Civil War, and Infinity War, and Endgame. You have to do those four.
I think,
And
those would be the bare minimums to get into this
'cause
show.
you can bypass the whole Jarvis background and whatnot, but
You need all the things that deal with Wanda and Vision.
And Vision, yeah, you really do.
To
For
get
for
into
it
WandaVision.
to at least, I want to say make sense, but for it to justify and I hate to so you can feel her feels.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
It understanding everything she's doing is only going to make sense knowing all of that, unfortunately. And if someone was doing that and they agree, like, okay, I'm gonna watch these things even though I know that these four things each have 10 other ones related to them, if I can keep the blinders on and know that in the end I just need to take out what I need to about these two, then that would be sufficient enough.
Well, and I think this presents itself as the real challenge Marvel's going to have going forward in the future with their MCU. It's the same thing that the comics ran into eventually, and DC responded to it by starting the New 52,
Mm-hmm.
giving new people a jumping on point where, listen, you don't got to catch up on everything else that's happened. You can come right in on whatever this is, and you don't have to have seen any of the rest. You're good to watch this, and from here forward, it's going to work for you. Now, do I think that's coming anytime soon? No. But eventually, they're going to hit that point where these movies are, Iron Man's 25, 30 years old, and they're still making MCU movies. And
you start looking at the timeline and you have to start watching 50 things and someone hasn't started that yet. They're going to go, fuck you, I'm not doing that.
Right. And they need that spot where they can say, okay, just start here and you'll know what's going on now.
Yeah.
Eventually they're going to come to that point, and this show, and what you're saying, Brian, really points to that. Is in terms of, like, we're starting anew after this ridiculously long break from Marvel content, and the first thing we start off with is something that new people aren't going to get.
Yeah.
Falcon and Winter Soldier might be a lot better for that. I think it will be.
I think so too, yeah.
Although there's parts of it I know that are coming, not to spoil anything, that are going to be, you're going to need background.
I'm sure certain things will help, but I'm expecting this, like I said, to be much more self-contained, and the scope of what it's trying to achieve to not be as, I hate to say it, like, not as impactful to as large of an area of the rest of the universe as, Wanda potentially is meant to be.
Don't you spoil anything for me, Mike.
No, I was just going to ask, have you seen the trailer? Because I know Brian did not.
I think I might have watched.
I think the Super Bowl one was the most recent one.
I
did around then.
Yeah, they had like a 2-minute spot that they put on YouTube after the 30-second spot on the Super Bowl.
I saw the 30-second piece, whatever that was. I think I saw that very first one, and I don't remember jack about it.
There's some interesting things that are going to happen. If you watch the 2-minute trailer, there's things that are going to tie to the bigger universe for sure.
Yeah, I think, Josh, I guess my impression of the show is going to be not that it doesn't tie into the larger universe, but it's going to be more straightforward and less trippy. Like, this show is weird as hell.
Right.
And for someone that doesn't know the MCU, like if Ian's mom hasn't watched any MCU stuff and comes into this show to be the first exposure to the MCU, and it's weird as fuck.
Yeah.
Like, that does not give you a sense of what the MCU is. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier is really going to hit more home as to what the MCU is, or like what we've experienced up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
A little more, but maybe just easier to follow.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have not seen the expanded preview. That's got Paula's name written all over it.
All I'll say is there was one thing that, I'm a grown man, but it made me go squee. So, well, there was one part of it where I did that. We'll talk about what that was later.
Yeah, I'm sure you
guys have seen things.
I don't know how long before we're going to start talking about on the show, depending on maybe what they do week to week. But I'm sure we will be revisiting that show at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume we'd treat it the same way we treat this one.
Yeah, we'll see how what kind of a start it gets off to. It kicks off in if it kicks off in the first 2 weeks and shit's hitting the fan and you're like, what the hell's going on? Then we might have to talk about it. But if it doesn't kick off until midway through the series, we'll kind of try to jump in there.
Well, I mean, it took to the Pietro reveal of Evan Peters to get us to be like, oh boy, now we need to talk about this.
Yeah, that one, looking forward for a moment, that one is slated to only be 6 episodes. And I am hoping that they end up being on the longer end, like 45 minutes to an hour, or at least a solid 30 minutes before credits, because if you're only doing 6, you got to hopefully squeeze a lot of storytelling and not a lot of fluff into that.
Yeah, from what I saw, I'm just guessing budget and all that wise from what I've seen in the trailer, you're probably looking at the shorter end.
Okay.
Just because it looked very high budget. And I don't think you're getting 6 hours of high budget action like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Fair.
You know.
I don't really have too many other notes. I think the only thing I have that I sort of just wanted to bring up, because we didn't really talk about it specifically, was just the structure of episode 8, which was the flashback through Wanda's life.
Yeah.
All of those scenes. I fucking loved that.
It was good.
And I loved the way they transitioned, like, between scenes. I loved the way that was directed, that was shot. I loved that they sort of started explaining, like, the retconning of, like, Wanda possibly having witch powers even when she was younger, so you could still...
It's not really a retcon.
Well, I mean, like, up until then, you're still led to believe she does not get powers until she's experimented on with the Mind Stone.
Right. But it's kind of the thing where, like I said before, technically now she can be a mutant.
Right, and I think this is just further
And-
proof that they could spin it that way if they want to, yeah.
Right. That's what I mean, because, you know, the mutations are always triggered by some major, you know, stressful event that happens to them, and that's what we see here.
Yeah.
So maybe that's both of those things happened at once, with the Mind Stone giving her some power and really augmenting what she already had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
this
anyway, I
one-
just wanted to touch that. I dug all that. I loved it.
Yeah. I
The
agree.
thing I'd touch on that I loved was the nod in episode 9 back to her original way of being, the movement. They show her with
Mhm.
like that horror movie twitchy ass movement
Oh, yeah.
when she like sneaks up on Agatha at the one point where, like, oh, I fucking love that they brought that back, because I love that part of it in Ultron.
Yeah,
Like, that part of
that's-
what they did with her was really awesome. And
Absolutely an aspect of her personality and the way to present her, you know, her interaction with the metaphysical world and the people around it and whatnot, and they never did it again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's, you know, I know I said this piece before, but when I heard, like, Scott Derrickson left Doctor Strange 2 around possibly the notion that it was going in less of a horror movie route than I would love to see, him combining some of those elements, like, I would love the marriage of those two. Like, give me
Yeah.
much more of Wanda being a creepy creeper and his horror movie background. Like, you could do some really cool stuff.
I'm not even a horror movie fan, but I wanted that too. So, the way they teased
it
that, I was
fits
looking
Doctor
forward to that.
Strange.
There was one other shot too in the episode 9 that when it happened, I'm like, why does that look familiar? And then it wasn't until, like, watching someone react to it on YouTube and they just called it out right when they saw it, and I was like, oh, that's what it's from. When they're in the town square and the family's there, like, all ready to fight, and the camera kind of, like, zooms in on them and kind of goes up a little bit. Does anyone recognize what that shot might be a homage to?
I'm trying to
Oh,
remember the
yeah, I
moments
saw
in the
that-
show that you're talking
No,
about.
I saw the same thing. It's I didn't get it myself. It's The Incredibles.
Yes. It totally feels like the Incredible shot when they're in the woods. Like, I was just waiting for every time I watch it now and it pans up like that, I could just hear the, like, da-da-da-da-da, like the Incredibles theme, like, coming out. Like, I'm ready for it now. Because, like, Vision's sitting there ready to karate chop someone, and I'm like, why does Vision look like a dumbass like that? He never fucking puts his hands out like that. So I love that little homage. I thought that was cool. But I think that's pretty much all I had. That's all the bullet points I had. So is there anything else you guys want to touch on to sort of wrap up here?
The only other thing that I have down as a minor complaint, that we don't really get an explanation as to why and how Monica gets her powers, other than, like, oh, she went through the hex and that just did it. That seems, I don't know, weak
I
to me. Like, I was not.
I'll
In the
buy it.
end-
I was hoping there was something
If
more.
you got to
to it.
do it, I think that's the best way to explain it for right now.
I have no problem buying it that way. I just hope that there's more flushed out about it later, because initially they made it seem like she was the only one.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
we understand it has happened to hundreds of people. And so if the same thing is not going to happen to those hundreds of people, why her?
Yeah.
Because it seemed like they were finding the irregularities after she was thrown out the first time.
Right.
Right. So it was immediate. Like you got pulled in, you got spit back out, and now we see this. Now you've gone back in again, and like the transformation is complete in a way after that like re-entry. But yeah, it's this again. We've talked about this before, and even on this show, we talked about the rules. I need to understand the rules.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And well, we don't even really see her use her power. We just see that she has it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's not really like fleshed out as to what Photon can do and what caused it. So maybe there's something else that's going to happen to her, and that was just a catalyst to make it possible.
I can
Quite
see
possibly.
that too. I'd buy it.
If that happens, I think I'll be more accepting of it, as opposed to she went through this barrier and it did weird stuff to her.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess at this point we just got to see where she ends up next. What show or movie.
Yeah.
Josh, did you have anything else you want to touch on that we didn't?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, I'll just end with I think it's going to be valuable again to just sit down and plow through the show again in like one or two sittings. I mean, collectively, it's really like again, take out the credits and whatnot. It's really not all that long, and
Right.
you got a weekend for your like a Saturday afternoon. You can get through most of it. And I'm just looking forward to probably enjoying it again. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Nice.
Oh, I will say real quick, the one moment that I think I had an audible out loud like oh moment when her and Agatha are having their sky battle, and then she reveals that she ruined the walls of the
Oh, yeah,
hex. I was like, oh, that's a good callback, and that wasn't too long ago, and she learned from you, and that's badass. Oh, some shit's gonna happen. Yeah, that was pretty good.
All right. Well, I guess that's. I think we can all pretty favorably, like we said, and we've all enjoyed the show. I'm not going to give it a rating. I don't think we should rate the series, other than like, yeah, it was good. I approve.
Thumbs up, thumbs down is a simple thing. I mean, it's a series. It's not a movie.
All right. So I guess that's it for us in WandaVision. We will, like I said, I'm sure we will be back at some point to talk Falcon and Winter Soldier. I don't know how soon. We'll see what goes on in the series when we think we've hit a point to feel like we need to get together and talk about it. So I'm sure that will be coming. But the next episode we'll be doing, which is one I think we're all so excited about, is for our next Rewind Theater. We will be watching 2019's The Kitchen that hit the wheel the last time.
Sorry, Dad, I'm sick.
We played.
I can't go to school today.
Yeah, I think we're all. It's just going to be like pulling teeth to get everybody to watch this one and see.
You know,
I don't know. Maybe
really should not leave these sentiments to the listeners. Like, yeah, come back soon. We're gonna talk about something. We don't know. Most of us, I don't think any of us have seen this one, so we might be pleasantly surprised. There might be something to talk about.
That's what I was going to add with. The expectations are very low. So it could be very enjoyable. Who the hell knows? We'll have to see.
I'll leave a seed for the viewers to get them to come back since it sounds so depressing. I'm going to watch a completely different movie and discuss it as though it was The Kitchen when we do this episode.
I think Josh is going to bitch slap you through the screen if you do that.
I was almost going to say in our chat when one of you said that, like, okay, you know what? Automatically, you're in charge of the summary.
I don't know. Andy volunteered for this.
You know
one.
what?
I kind of feel like we need to let him have this
one.
one.
The summary, and you're going to get Commando.
What about Commando?
We're going to do Schwarzenegger and Commando. That'll be the summary you get. Leave me in charge. No, but it's fun for the listeners. You guys can guess in the comments as to what movie I discuss instead of The Kitchen.
Asshole.
All right, so that's where we're going to leave this one. If you've enjoyed the show, please support us. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Be sure to give us a share on social media. You can follow or subscribe to the show wherever, hopefully, you find a podcast, which includes Spotify, iTunes, Google, Anchor, Stitcher. You can find us on Facebook. Search Bry Guy and His Super Friends, or go to facebook.com/Bry Guy Super Friends. You can send us questions, comments, topic suggestions. Any of the stuff you like or don't like, let us know. We can hit us up there. Feel free to send us an email, bryguysuperfriends@gmail.com. It's legit. It works. It's there. I won't check it, but 2 years from now, maybe I'll see it. Hit us up on Twitter at BG Super Friends. That works. We'll definitely see that one. And feel free to follow me on Twitch if you would like. I am Jedi Bry Guy on there. Jedi with an I, Bry with a Y. The few times we've gone live and actually done shows, streamed it live as we recorded, we've done them on that Twitch page. So if we ever do one again, that's where that will be. Other than that, on behalf of Josh, Mike, and myself, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.